This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're joined in the studio by Greg Olsen, the longtime director of the New York State Office for the Aging, who's here to help us break down some of what is in Governor Kathy Hochul's executive budget proposal. Thanks for making the time, Greg.
Thanks for having me back, and you're right, it has been a long time.
One of the longest serving, I guess we'll say, cabinet officials in New York, by my record.
Yep, 15 years, longest serving NYSOFA director in history.
Must have dirt somewhere on somebody.
Absolutely not.
Well, let's start with the state's long-term care ombudsman program, a federally required initiative responsible for, in New York, monitoring about 1,400 facilities, including about 600 nursing homes, if the AARP New York stats are right. It's my understanding that they are supposed to be weekly visits, and while that's been the goal, we're clearly short of that. How frequent are visits now? And in terms of the governor's budget proposal, what are your expectations about the frequency of visits moving forward?
Yeah, I think the gold standard, obviously, is to try to have 2 visits per week, one with a paid staff. And, again, thanks to the governor and the legislature over the last couple of years, we got a $5 million investment. The service is bodies, FTEs. So that's been extraordinarily helpful. We went from around a 32% rate of visiting facilities upwards of 90%. So are we at the 2 a week? No, we're not. But I know this is a topic that continues to be of discussion, both during budget negotiations with, the executive and the legislature.
And is the budget proposal doing level funding year over year that the governor's proposing? Is there an increase? Well, what's the figure look like?
Well, for the state, it's a little over $7 million, and then we get some federal funds, and then we provide some additional dollars through some various funding streams to try to beef it up. As you know, with all budgets, and this is kind of where we're unique, and I really have to thank the governor, is usually when the legislature adds money to a particular program or service, it is not captured the following year. That has not been true for the long-term care ombudsman program. We've been able to baseline that money. It becomes part of future financial plans. So at this point, we're at the same funding level as last year. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of folks talking about it, and that's the process we're going through now.
And in your budget testimony, you noted that there has been a transition in this space where volunteers made up a larger portion of the people doing this monitoring than they do today. And we've been talking on our show a little bit about the adult homes, and they have a program where they basically turn these people into self-advocates. And I wonder if that's something that happens at all in the long-term care space. And if it does, can that be expanded on? And if it's not, is there ability to set up something akin to the adult home care councils?
There actually is. So part of the budget testimony following me was this woman, Marcella, we've been working with, who developed exactly what you talked about, because her husband has been in a nursing home. And due to, staffing cuts, not cuts, but people not getting into the business, really post-COVID, there's been a workforce issue. And she developed a whole project to train folks like herself, residents councils, to actually provide some of the care. So her program, I think, is amazing. We did a pilot with her last year to expand to 5 additional nursing homes, and then we have just provided another $49,000 to keep growing this. The facility management staff love it because it helps them supplement care if they're short on staff. The residents love it because they're getting better care, and the families love it because they can see the positivity within the people that they love there.
So in order to grow something like that, is it just about money? Is it about awareness? How do you expand that?
It's really about funding, right? So, the first thing is you have to get an administrator to agree, and that has not been a problem because of the benefits of it. What we've been funding is really the training to move to a different facility. I know that there is legislation that either will be or has been introduced by Assemblyman Hevesy to receive additional funding for the expansion of this program.
So I want to turn to a favorite topic of mine, and that's Project Guardianship. And for people who aren't familiar, this is a nonprofit that helps, in some cases, older New Yorkers with making day-to-day decisions for whatever reason they can't do. The Senate Majority's analysis of the budget proposal says there's a $1.1 million year-over-year decrease for this funding line. Is that accurate? And if it is is there an alternative plan for serving this population?
Yeah, it's really important. And just so your audience knows, and I'm glad you raised this, guardians are required, they're court appointed for somebody that can't make a decision anymore. And that was traditionally using pro bono lawyers or lawyers to do that. They're not doing it anymore. So then the second line of defense is it's a requirement of local departments of social services to have guardians available. They're in short supply as well. So there's not many guardians. So there's been some projects that were funded on Long Island years ago that could train people like me, a social worker, a caseworker, or somebody else that could be appointed a guardian. We've received funding in our budget to provide to Project Guardianship. They established a hotline. You said that a lot of times, this issue is an older adult issue. It is. Again, it could be all ages, but the vast
Mhm.
majority are older adults. I do know that the Office of Court Administration, and obviously there are the judges, et cetera, that appoint guardians, are putting out an RFP where they're targeting some resources towards the development of these types of programs. And I know there's been a large advocacy effort last year and this year to get additional resources to be able to train and identify, like I said, people like me, social workers and others that could do this throughout New York State.
So historically, it's my understanding that this has been a legislative grant. So would you be okay in the process of the budget negotiations if the legislature said, "Hey, we'd like to prioritize this. Here's $1.1 million."
Yeah, I mean, look, we're never. There's not going to be any agency, business, federal, state, local that's not going to say we could do more with more resources. So, if the legislature determines that's a priority and that winds up getting through budget negotiations, that's going to be great.
Sure. So last summer, we got the final copy of the state's master plan on aging. Where do you see elements of that plan being incorporated into this governor's budget proposal? And you're smiling. You were ready for this one.
Well, I'm so happy you said that because I was at the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus weekend, and I was on a panel on the MPA, and I've been talking around the state about the MPA, what's in it, some of the things that I'm really interested in, and I think the general view out there is that nothing's happening, and that is just simply not true. So the number one recommendation in there was to increase funding to the New York State Office for Aging. That was done, the largest investment in our agency's history. Another in there is regarding financial frauds and scams and developing training and a campaign that wound up being in the governor's state of the state, expanding the naturally occurring retirement community and neighborhood NORC program. In the governor's budget is a proposal for an $8 million increase so we can grow those across the state. There's workforce recommendations that are in the health department's budget. Combating ageism, elder abuse, developing a one-stop shop for all benefits for older adults. That was in the state of the state. I could list you 10 more, but for the general public who thinks that, the report was just put out, now it's sitting on a shelf, that is not true at all. One of the ones that I love, and again, some of these things you can do administratively, and that's what I'm kind of looking to do. Things that we can do within our agency and other partners was on older workers to develop a bureau within the Department of Labor that supports older workers. We did that administratively and launched it a couple of months ago.
And this plan, it's not just things that might fall under the purview of the Office of Aging. It's a recognition of how every decision that the state makes needs to kind of take in consideration how it might impact seniors. So, what, if anything, are you doing in the wake of that plan to improve, say, coordination among state agencies?
Yeah, you're spot on, and I think we've talked about this before. Older adults just don't touch the state office for aging. So 70% of our state's veterans are over 60, 440,000. So we have a project to improve transportation with our office and DVS. There's a lot of supportive housing proposals in the Office of Mental Health. 50% of the residents of supportive housing are older people. But you could go through each of the agencies. Obviously, the health department, right? If you look at where HEAP and SNAP are administered, it's in OTDA. If you look at where Adult Protective Services is, it's in OCFS. Ag and Markets is really important to our nutrition
Sure.
program. And I could go on and on. So I think what the other agencies are doing now are the same things that we're doing. There's some recommendations in there that are not viable. It's just the way that it goes. But there are short-term things that we can do, and I highlighted some of those. The agencies are doing the same type of thing. Then there's going to be those things that have a fiscal on them. Well, we're in that budget cycle now. And then there's recommendations in there that might need a statutory or regulatory change if they're viable, and that might take longer. So while the report came out in April, May last year, there's still a lot happening, and I want listeners to know that, like I said, it's not a document sitting on a shelf. It's living and breathing.
How does this budget, if at all, change the traditional dynamic of spending on, say, upfront costs that might help us avoid long-term costs, like, say, a minor home upgrade that lets someone stay in their home, versus those longer-term responsive costs, like paying for someone in a nursing home? Does this make any shifts in resources, or do you feel like this is kind of a continuation of the sort of existing dynamic where much more money ends up being spent on those back end things?
Well, it does. I mean, 3% of our federal and state spending are in the community where people want to be, where the overwhelming majority of people want to be. 97% is spent exactly where you said it is: hospitals, most expensive care, long term care, et cetera. I've been doing this in New York for 35 years. So you're starting to see a slow shift to understand that prevention really makes a difference. So I'll go back to the governor's investment in our agency. We serve now nursing home eligible people on our caseloads. We have our own personal care program. We have our own consumer directed program for non Medicaid. It costs 1/17th the cost of a nursing home
Sure.
for us to do it in the community, and we can do it for 5 to 7 years. So I think as we're able to show, governor's office, division of the budget, MLTC plans, Medicare Advantage, who are now allowed to quote unquote socially prescribe, and these are the types of services that we provide, and others, that they're starting to see that these investments really do pay off. One of the things I talk about a lot is, can you prevent future Medicaid spending, right? Some folks have said, no, you can't. I say, you absolutely can. Because if you can't get up in the morning, bathe, dress, go to the bathroom, shower, prepare a meal, shop, pay your bills, you're not staying at home. And if you're not staying at home, you're going somewhere else. And, for the majority of our clients, they're low income. They're not private paying for this stuff. It's a Medicaid cost.
But how do you facilitate that transition? Because you can't do it right overnight because there's still that population that's in a nursing home that needs that care. So is it about a dramatic increase in the upfront costs while still paying those back end costs? Is there any way to get flexibility? I mean, I don't see how you do it without a dramatic increase in spending that eventually pays off down the road.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on. Look, nursing homes, assisted living, adult care facilities, things like that are always going to be needed, but they should not be the first line of defense. For the last 60 years, they have been, right? Somebody's in a hospital, they're getting ready to be discharged. It's an unsafe discharge, so they wind up in a nursing home. That
Sure.
does not need to happen if you have a community-based infrastructure. So it's being able to show return on investment, what we're being able to save, et cetera. But to your point, spot on. I mean, those are the types of resources that folks need. 9 out of 10 people want to stay at home. There's 110,000 licensed nursing home beds in the state of New York with about 90% occupancy. So let's call it 100,000 people in a nursing home. But we got over 5 million people over the age of 60 in New York, and many folks who are caring for them are family members, and they're working,
Sure.
working in state government. So, we've been calling on the federal government to increase our budget. The least amount of money we get from the federal government. The state has been spectacular. The governor has been great to us. The legislature has been great to us over the years in investing, and counties invest quite a bit of money through required match. But yeah, to your point, any agency can do more if they have more, but I think there's beginning to be a real recognition on the value of what our office does, our county offices for the aging, and our 1,242 community-based organizations.
Well, lastly, we are in that phase of the budget process where the ball is in the legislature's court, so to speak. And now that they have it and are going to go to bat for whatever they are prioritizing, is there anything that you'd want to steer them toward? Anything where you'd say, hey, maybe if you're going to spend some extra money, spend it on this. Or if you're looking to add a program, maybe you could add this. Is there anything where you'd say, this is where I prioritize?
I think that the existing, you talked about guardianship. That's a really important issue. We're doing a lot of work on scams and financial fraud. Costs older adults $29 billion a year, but we can do those types of things in-house. I think what the governor and the legislature have really helped us out is to address the waiting lists. that we've had for services. That's why we had such a large investment last year that is maintained in the state's financial plan this year. But the wait lists are growing, and they're going to continue to grow because the population's getting older.
So if the legislature could throw some more money at that, that'd be helpful?
Well, I think that those investments pay off, and we can show that return on investment. And these are their constituents. These are the governor's constituents. These are the people that we serve, and it's just not people 60 and over. We serve their caregivers as well. So, for us, I think that would be the biggest help because it helps people access services, and it exactly in line with the governor's public safety, affordability agenda, mental health support. But it's really about affordability because some of these things like personal care aid is really, really expensive, and we provide those services at no cost to the end user.
Well, we've been speaking with Greg Olsen. He's the director of the New York State Office for the Aging. Director Olsen, thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
Support for the Capitol Press Room comes from O'Donnell and Associates, a public affairs firm providing strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits on navigating policy and regulatory issues. More information is available at o'donnellsolutions.com.